My name is Jackson Healy, but most people call me Jack. I can't believe I've been standing in my bedroom doorway for almost 10 minutes now and watching my wife Dakota cheat on me with a guy I've never seen before. I had more than enough time to capture the entire scene on my iPhone, and I even took some good photos. The lovebirds still hadn't noticed me, and judging by what was happening on my side of the bed, I had plenty of time to shoot even more. But to be honest, it was becoming something of a monotony. Watching him, I realized that the guy seemed a little familiar to me. Maybe it was because he looked like me. I mean, he wasn't younger, taller, or in better shape. Brown hair, blue eyes, 10 fingers, and toes. Just like mine, you get the idea. So what was the attraction? I think the real attraction was that the guy she was with wasn't me. I know this is the most common cliché, but I returned home a day early from a business trip, only to find an all-too-familiar strange car in the driveway, which brought me to this moment. I was also worried about the question, why would my wife force her lover to park the car right in the middle of our driveway? We live in a suburban cul-de-sac that has 12 other houses, and we have a pretty tight-knit community like most neighborhoods like ours. Did she really not care if someone found out about her cheating? To find your wife in her bed with some scumbag is, of course, shocking. But to be honest, what hurt me the most was that in all the 18 years of our marriage, Dakota had never shown this to me. Our bed life was rather banal, but it was satisfying. At least that's what I always thought until recently. Strangely enough, I was not seized with a burning rage. I didn't want to grab a gun and shoot them both or take one of my daughter's aluminum softball bat and use it. Of course, I was angry, saddened, offended, and confused like any husband in my place, but I think the lack of anger was due to the fact that I had already accepted that my marriage was over. How could it be otherwise? Maybe in time I would have wanted to know why she did it, but it didn't matter now. She did it, and it ended our marriage. The case is closed, the end of the story. As I was thinking about what to do next, I noticed an unopened box of Trojans on Dakota's nightstand. Why do you need protection if you are not going to use them? After we had our 2 daughters, Sheridan, 13, and Helena, 11, Dakota insisted I wear them until I got a vasectomy. She said 2 kids were enough, though I had always hoped for a son. I've always regretted not pushing harder on that. That's when I realized something was missing. For as long as I could remember, Dakota had 4 photos displayed on her nightstand. I used to call it her shrine. Now 2 of them were gone. The largest one, a family portrait we had done professionally when the girls were babies, was missing, along with our wedding photo. I never thought much about it before, but our wedding picture was the smallest of the 4. I might have to reconsider its importance. The photos of our daughters, though, were still out for her lover to see. What kind of nonsense was that? There wasn't anything particularly special about those photos. I think they were just their annual school pictures from kindergarten, framed years ago. You wouldn't think asking myself where the photos had gone would be important at a time like this. Maybe I was in shock or having some kind of out-of-body experience, but that suddenly felt like the most urgent question to me. As I thought it over, I realized exactly where they would be. They would be in the second drawer of her I just had to have it expensive Drexel Heritage dresser, which I happened to be standing next to. I quietly opened the drawer, and sure enough, there they were. How did I know? Dakota had this quirky habit of cleaning the house just before the cleaners arrived. She would throw anything loose or without a proper place into that drawer. Once I jokingly asked her if she was worried the cleaners might steal her hairbrush. She gave me one of those "you're exhausting me" looks. I thought it was just her thing, but at a neighborhood party I playfully shared the story with her friends, expecting to embarrass her a bit. To my surprise, instead of laughing, they looked at me like I was clueless. Of course, you clean before the cleaners come. Then another thought crossed my mind. Was hiding the photos her way of showing some minimal respect? Given the circumstances, that seemed hard to believe. Maybe her boyfriend had asked her to? For reasons I couldn't quite explain, I carefully took the photos from the drawer. It was time to go. With the photos in hand, I quietly left. It was only 3 o'clock, so I decided to stop by the office. I'd been gone for a few days, and I was sure there would be a pile of pointless paperwork waiting for me. I arrived and made a beeline for my office. I'm sure a few co-workers acknowledged me, but I didn't hear a single greeting. I was solely focused on shutting myself away. I closed the door behind me. The first thing I did was place the 2 photos I had taken on my credenza. I wasn't sure why, but I did it anyway, to remind me of something, though I wasn't exactly sure of what. After collecting my thoughts, I called my longtime friend, Ennis H. Dixon, Esquire. He specialized in family law, but back in the day, I knew him as a spoiled, rich kid snob. We were roommates throughout college. Once I asked him why someone with his wealth was living in the dorms with us, less fortunate folks. He explained that his parents wanted him to mix with people below his elite social class, so he'd appreciate his privileged position. He insisted I call him Ennis H. When I said that sounded a bit pretentious, he simply replied, "Well, I am." It's hard not to like someone who's so blunt about who they are. I always called him EH, though, just to annoy him. I got away with it because I was his best friend. Maybe his only real friend, to be honest. It seemed Ennis H. Dixon had risen in the world. When I called, I had to go through 3 assistants to reach him. He still hadn't given me his cell number. He reserved it for clients, so he could track his billable hours better. Apparently, it never occurred to him to just use 2 phones. I thought all self-important jerks had at least 2. "Jackson, good to hear from you. What can I do for you?" He never called me Jack, just to irritate me. "I need your cell number, EH." "Oh, crap, what happened?" So, I told him everything. For all I know, they're still at it in my bed right now. "Man, that's brutal. What do you want to do?" "Divorce, plain and simple. But I want her and her lover to feel the pain." "Well, my friend, you're in luck for 2 reasons. First, I'm the best family lawyer in the state. And second, you don't live in one of those no-fault states. I'm sure you'll want primary custody, but that's going to be tough. Not impossible, but not easy either. Also, even if we prove adultery, she'll likely still get alimony. She's a stay-at-home mom, and you make a lot of money, so you might take a big hit, even in an at-fault state. Here's what I'll do. I'll put my investigators on Dakota and her lover. It's going to cost a lot, but if you want custody, we'll need more than just catching them in your bed. We need to know everything about her affair and the guy she's with. Do it. I don't care about the cost." "You should never say that to a lawyer, Jackson. It's like giving an addict a fix." He must have noticed my reaction because he paused and became serious. "I'm sorry, Jackson. I didn't mean to make light of the situation. I don't want your apology, EH. I want you to be ruthless. I can do ruthless. This might take a few weeks, and for it to work, I need you to act normal around your wife for a bit. Can you do that?" "Yes." I gave him the details he needed and sent over the evidence I had via email. He sent me the retainer form, and I signed it with DocuSign while we were still on the call. I hung up feeling more defeated but also more determined. A knock on the door interrupted my spiral of self-pity. "Come in," My administrative assistant, Franny Graybull, entered cautiously. "Everything all right, boss?" she asked hesitantly. "Yeah, Franny, everything's fine. I finished up early and decided to head home." "I know, Jack. But when you rushed past me without saying hello or even acknowledging me, I got worried. And you've been in here for over an hour." "I'm sorry, Franny. I've just got a lot on my mind." Franny Graybull had been my assistant for more than 15 years. I originally hired her as a favor to my wife, Dakota. Franny was an old friend of Dakota's who had gone through some hard times. Her husband had died in a work-related accident. Though he was in the military, he was stationed stateside in a non-combat role, which meant his life insurance policy only amounted to $12,000. If he had been in a hazardous duty role, Franny would have received an additional $100,000. With 2 kids to raise, 12 grand didn't stretch far. It was a tough situation for her, but I never regretted hiring her. She turned out to be an excellent administrative assistant. "Okay, Jack, I'm heading home now." I could tell she wasn't fully convinced by my casual tone. She knew me too well. As she started to leave, she paused, noticing the new photos on the credenza. "Those are new?" "Yeah, I brought them in to remind myself why I do this and what really matters." "Oh, that's so sweet, boss. Have a good evening." "Bye, Franny." I thought about telling her something because I trusted her completely. But at the last second, I remembered what E.H. said about keeping things normal. So, I let it go. But how are you supposed to act normal when just a few hours ago you walked in on your wife having intimacy with someone else in your own bed? I knew going to a hotel wasn't an option. Too many people had already seen me. I figured I'd better head home. The entire 20-minute drive, my mind was racing, trying to figure out how I was going to keep it together and act normal. By the time I pulled into the garage, I still had no idea how I was going to pull that off. Dakota clearly heard my car pulling into the garage. She was waiting for me at the garage door, and I saw a mix of emotions flash in her eyes. Fear, worry, and a hint of anger, all at once. But just as quickly they disappeared, replaced by her best smile. "Oh my God, Jack, you're home. We weren't expecting you until tomorrow. Yeah, you backstabbing liar, I'm home. Screw you." "I thought I'd surprise you. I got in around 3 and decided to finish the day at the office." "Well, we're glad you're home, honey." She kissed me on the cheek. "Dinner will be ready in a few minutes, but it's nothing special since I wasn't expecting you." "That's fine. I'm not that hungry anyway. I'm going to change out of this suit. It feels like I've been wearing it for weeks." I headed up the stairs. That's when the girls caught up to me. They hugged me, squealing and laughing the whole time. "We're so glad you're home. We love you, Daddy." "I love you too, girls. I miss you so much when I'm away on these trips." At least I still had them, I thought to myself. Their greeting gave me a sense of courage and purpose. I knew I could carry out the deception, if only for their sake. Once I managed to free myself from the little ones, I continued on to what used to be my bedroom. I wasn't sure what I was expecting to see, but everything appeared normal. The sheets smelled fresh. The room was spotless, though that was nothing unusual. Our bedroom had always been immaculate. Now I understood why. She must have noticed me in a daze, staring at her nightstand. The 2 photos were the only things that seemed out of place. I was struggling to keep my emotions in check when her voice startled me. "I'm sorry, honey. I accidentally broke the frames while I was cleaning. I took them to Aaron Brothers to get them reframed." I simply nodded in acknowledgement without looking at her and continued getting changed. At some point she left. Oh, and in case you're wondering, she smelled as fresh as ever, just like every day when I came home. I wasn't the best at hiding my emotions because Dakota was jumpy and tense all through dinner and the rest of the evening. I mostly kept my distance by spending time with the girls, helping them with their homework. Dinner, which was usually filled with laughter and chatter, was unnervingly quiet. I could tell the girls sensed something was off, but they didn't press. As for Dakota, she kept staring at me with an unreadable expression. If I was going to act normal like EH wanted me to, I'd have to do a lot better. After the girls were asleep for the night, I poured myself a glass of Maker's Mark and sank into my well-worn recliner in my den. She called it my man cave. It was the one room in the house I could claim as my own, reflecting my tastes. I thought it was warm, inviting, and comfortable. Dakota, on the other hand, called it a nouveau embarrassment. I knew I'd have to face her before going to bed, so I was trying to figure out how to handle it when Dakota made the decision for me. She walked in looking anxious, wringing her hands. Normally, Dakota avoided this room like the plague, but she headed straight for the couch across from my chair. "Come here, sweetheart. Sit on my lap," I said as lightly as I could manage, patting my knees. Her face lit up, and she quickly jumped up from the couch and settled onto my lap. I gave her a quick kiss on the cheek. "I'm sorry I was so distracted at dinner. My trip didn't go as planned, and I have a lot of things to sort out, so my mind was elsewhere." She brightened noticeably. "That's okay, Jack. I knew something was bothering you. If you let me, I'll help you forget all about your work problems later tonight." The thing was, she didn't make me forget my problems. Sure, we made love. It was the same gentle, familiar connection we always shared, with lots of cuddling and mutual sighs of contentment. I thought that was what she wanted, but it was nothing like what I had witnessed earlier. Dakota held me close afterward and said, "You know I love you, Jack. I really do. You've made my life complete." I nearly vomited on the spot. How could she do that? How could someone change so drastically, so easily? Her lies and deceit flowed from her lips as casually as if she were reciting a recipe. I quickly realized the answer to my own question, because she had been doing it for a long time. That realization sent a shiver down my spine and a heavy weight settled on my chest. In a few moments I could hear her rhythmic breathing, signaling that she was already asleep. Less than 8 hours ago she had been in bed with her lover, and now she was falling asleep with the snap of her fingers. What kind of person can do that? Needless to say, I didn't get a wink of sleep. I managed to pull myself together enough to head to work early the next morning. I needed to leave before Dakota woke up to get the girls ready for school. I left a brief note on the dry erase board in the kitchen, which we frequently used for such messages. Had to get to work early, starting on the problems I mentioned. Somehow, I managed to maintain a semblance of normalcy over the next couple of weeks. It became easier as time passed while I waited for updates from EH. Perhaps that's how cheaters become adept at lying and concealing their affairs. Given enough time, they get plenty of practice. Dakota, on the other hand, grew increasingly anxious. She seemed burdened but never spoke about it. She was unusually affectionate, going out of her way to be physically close, and told me she loved me at least 25 times a day. She even complimented my attire. She must have noticed the missing photos. They didn't just disappear on their own. So far, though, she seemed to be adopting a don't ask, don't tell approach, and I hoped that would continue a bit longer. Franny had been acting strangely as well. She knew me so well that she could detect even the slightest shifts in my mood and demeanor. She persistently pushed me to talk about it, which annoyed me, but I remained silent. I only told her that work pressures were mounting and that I'd be okay. She always seemed to know when I was lying. Another thing that bothered me was how she kept staring intently at the photos on my credenza. What was that all about? I had long accepted that I wasn't very good at reading women's emotions. I couldn't tell if Franny was feeling sad, anxious, or angry. But every time she left my office after looking at the photos, she had that unreadable expression on her face. I think women are generally better at picking up on these things than men. I was seriously starting to question my own sanity. I wasn't experiencing the emotions I thought I should be. I felt like I was going numb inside. Every moment felt like a heavy weight was pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I was just going through the motions of living. I needed my nightmare to end soon. Then I received the call from EH, asking me to come to his office immediately. Yes, they are in a difficult situation. But here's the problem, Jackson. I need you to prepare. She dated Mr. Dubois for a very long time, even before your marriage. My investigators claim that he bragged about sleeping with Dakota on the morning of your wedding day, just a few hours before the ceremony. According to Dubois, Dakota told him that she intended to give you a few seconds of pleasure on your wedding night. I should have been furious and retaliated, but all that came to my mind was to ask, how did your investigators find out about this? You don't want to know, Jackson. Many important details that we have cannot be used in court anyway. And if I wasn't such an experienced lawyer, we might even have problems because of this. He laughed out loud at his attempt at a joke. Damn it, what about the kids? I wonder if they are mine. I could tell by the look on his face that there was more bad news ahead. That's not all, is it? Could she have been married to him too? You know, one of those people who lives a double life is a bigamist. Oh, Dubois is married, that's right. But not to your wife. He has his own family. He has been married for 10 years and has 3 children, all under 8 years old. It'll be easier to remove it if you want to. I do not know, yes. I don't want to ruin the life of his wife and children. Well, Jackson, maybe you're really doing his wife and kids a favor. If you decide to watch the video with Dakota and him, you will see that he is pretty much separating you from his wife. Dakota doesn't actively participate in the criticism, but she doesn't stop it either. In fact, my team found out that he only married his wife because Dakota wouldn't divorce you to be with him. Jesus Christ, after everything you've learned, why does she still want to stay married to me? We haven't figured it out yet, buddy, but we're working on it. Just give us some time. I can barely stand on my feet. When can we serve her? In due course, Jackson, but I'm working on something worth waiting for. Life continued as usual. Dakota was very affectionate, keeping the girls on their best behavior, and our intimacy increased slightly compared to before. Despite this, the nature of our lovemaking remained unchanged, and she always seemed genuinely satisfied. I doubted she could be such a good actress to fake her satisfaction for so many years, which made her infidelity even more troubling. I considered myself a realist and recognized that most women imitate at some point, about 80%, according to one survey. Years ago, I had asked her if she ever faked it, and she admitted she had. I told her it hurt me and asked her not to do it anymore, assuring her my ego was strong enough to handle the truth. I emphasized the importance of openness and honesty between us. However, about 25 to 30% of the time we had intimacy, she didn't enjoy it. It never seemed to bother her much. She claimed that men are more fixated on this than women, and insisted that the most important thing was that she always felt safe, warm, and loved with me. I wondered if I was just being naive. I was driving myself mad, trying to make sense of her actions, how she could say all that and still be unfaithful. Eventually, I decided it was better for me to fake it until I could resolve this situation. I couldn't figure out what EH was waiting for. The following Monday, he called me and asked me to come to his office again. EH was the kind of guy who would be cracking jokes even on his deathbed. He never took anything seriously, but seeing him now, I thought he might be physically unwell soon. He slowly nodded his head and said, "Look, Jack, I'm not exactly sure how to put this, but it might change your perspective on custody." "They aren't mine, are they?" "We won't know for sure until we get a DNA test, but no, I don't think they are yours, but it's even worse." "How much worse could it be, EH? If they're not biologically mine." "They know, Jack." "What are you talking about?" I interrupted sharply. "The girls know Dubois is their biological father. My team got a video of Dubois, Dakota, and the girls having a picnic at the park last Sunday. They were calling him Daddy. He and your wife were holding hands, kissing, and playing games with Sheridan and Helena. That was the point where everything went black. When I came to a couple of minutes later, I remembered Dakota telling me while I was mowing the lawn last Sunday that she was taking the girls to the park. What a bit, eh? The next thing I remember, EH's paralegal had a cold, damp towel pressed against my forehead and was calling my name. "Jackson, what happened?" "You passed out." "Let me call the paramedics." "No, I'll be okay. I was shaking my head to get the blood flowing to my brain. Sorry about that, EH. Jesus, it feels like my whole life has been a lie." "Buddy, you just said the magic word." "What word?" "Fraud." "I've been thinking, you're a better man than I am. But if I were in your position, I'd want real permanent revenge. I wouldn't settle for just tipping off his wife and divorcing Dakota. I think I might have a way to achieve that. Did you know you can annul a marriage for fraud? We've been married for 18 years, EH. How on earth can I get an annulment? In our state, the duration of the marriage doesn't matter if it's a fraud. You just need to file within 4 years of discovering the fraud. I won't sugarcoat it. It won't be easy, but it might be worth trying. If you manage to get an annulment, you wouldn't have to pay alimony. You might not have to pay child support either, depending on the judge." "What? Are you serious? Child support?" "Unless we can prove Dakota and Dubois deliberately and fraudulently had you raised Dubois children, there's a chance you might be stuck with it. But that's not my main reason for suggesting annulment. If we file for divorce, your case won't attract public attention. But if we file for an annulment after 18 years of marriage, I bet the tabloids and news outlets will be all over it. We'd publicly shame them both. It would also make our case for back child support much stronger. And that's where I can get my 40%. I could even give you a 5% discount. Plus, you get the ruthless approach you wanted. Your generosity is moving, EH. It really touches me." I tapped my chest. "And there's more, Jack. We've uncovered some other interesting details." I listened to what he had to say, and then we began making plans and saying our farewells. By that point, I was no longer easily shocked. When I got back to the office, Franny confronted me immediately. "Jack, what's wrong with you? You look terrible. I'm taking you to the doctor right now." "No, Franny." "But Jack, I said that's enough, Ms. Graybull." She looked taken aback by my tone, but left reluctantly, visibly disheartened. I didn't care, as I had already received an education earlier in EH's office. I had been expecting it eventually, and sure enough, less than 30 minutes after sending Franny away, Dakota's slim figure appeared in my doorway. She was clearly braless, wearing provocative 4-inch heels and displaying cleavage down to her navel. Damn, she was attractive. What a waste. Franny called me. She said something was wrong. I snorted sarcastically, interrupting her. I was struggling to maintain my composure and trying to come up with a response when I noticed she was staring at the photographs, as if she knew exactly where to find them. She sighed deeply and took a seat in one of the chairs in front of my desk. She wasn't wearing panties either. Did she really think that would make a difference? You were there. You saw us. She looked sad, but her words were mostly matter-of-fact, cutting me deeply regardless. It doesn't mean anything, Jack. It's just a fling. It doesn't compare to what we have. Tell me, Dakota. I know that wasn't the first time. How long has it been going on? No, it wasn't the first time, sweetheart, but it's only been a couple of months. She almost sounded sincere. 2 months. How many times? I think it's only been 3 or 4 times, baby, and never before at the house. I messed up. It's over. Let's just forget about it. The lies flowed from her lips effortlessly with no trace of remorse. She didn't sweat, fidget, or look away. She maintained unwavering eye contact and didn't even blink. Her deceit was delivered coldly while she stared straight into my eyes. I knew she had no intention of leaving her boyfriend. Thank you for being honest with me, Dakota. Most cheaters would probably have lied and claimed it was their first time. Like drunks saying, I swear, officer, I only had 2 drinks. But you told me the truth. You gave me a glimpse into who you really are, and I appreciate that. I tried to keep a neutral expression on my face. I saw a brief flutter of her eyelids at my comment, but nothing more. She must have sensed something in my expression. Don't do this, Jack. It won't end well for you. You'll be hurt in ways you can't even imagine. It's unnecessary. Just let it go and let's continue with our lives. I love you. You love me, and we both love the girls. Please, just let it go. It almost sounds like a threat, Dakota. Oh, honey, I didn't mean it that way. I'm not threatening you. What I meant is that you control how much my failings affect you and us. But mostly, Jack, it will hurt Helena and Sheridan. They didn't do anything wrong. I did. Please, let's discuss this further when you get home tonight. I know I can make you understand. Okay, we'll talk more tonight, but I need to get back to work now. She walked over, pressed a searing kiss against my lips, and shoved her tongue down my throat before I could react. Maybe she confused me with her boyfriend? We're great together, babe. Don't let my mistakes tear our family apart. With that, she turned and sauntered out the door as if she had no worries. I was so stunned that I just sat there, dumbfounded and wide-eyed, for about 5 minutes before I finally used the intercom. Ms. Grable, could you please come in? How long have you known Ms. Grable? You told her about the photos, didn't you? There was silence. She was sitting rigidly in her chair, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief and looking down. I'm waiting for an answer. She looked up and said, So, now, it's Ms. Grable, Jack. After all these years? Yes, and for now, it's Mr. Healy. Are you going to fire me, Mr. Healy? You know I really need this job. She was sobbing openly now. Not if I get an honest answer from you and you agree to provide an affidavit to my attorney. What will it be? I've known for a while. I disgustedly reached for the company phone. Hi, Georgina. I need to speak with William about a problem. William Bill. Cody was the Vice President of Human Resources. Franny interrupted me. Please don't do that. I'm sorry, Mr. Healy. I knew before you hired me. What did you know, Ms. Grable? She started to hedge again. I slapped my palm hard on the desk, creating a sharp noise that startled her. I'm losing my patience. You know about her, well, her activities. I'm tired of the games, Ms. Grable. I'm done with the questions. Tell me everything. Now. I could see her trying to decide whether to reveal the whole truth. I won't accept anything less than the complete truth, Franny. I softened my voice and tone deliberately. Please, Franny. You owe me that for helping you. I'm trying to understand why you would betray me like this. She needed a moment to compose herself, as she was nearly hyperventilating. Then she revealed everything. Byron Dubois was her cousin on her mother's side. She knew about his relationship with Dakota, which began in high school, and that Helena and Sheridan weren't my children. In fact, Dubois fathering the girls was a deliberate act. Each revelation was like another stab to my heart. But the pain wasn't just from losing my love for Dakota. It was Franny's betrayal that cut even deeper. For some reason, her betrayal hurt more. I trusted you completely, Franny, I said, feeling the emotional weight of it all. Why was Dakota so desperate for me to hire you? She wanted you monitored. She needed me to alert her if you ever got close to uncovering her other life. Franny lowered her head, looking embarrassed. She's embarrassed now. Seriously? She also wanted me to report if you ever cheated on her. Her voice was barely audible. Oh, for goodness sake. I don't know if you can help me with this, Franny, but do you have any idea why she wanted to marry me in the first place? Especially considering she was just here declaring her undying love and begging us to stay married. You might find it hard to believe, but she truly does love you. I gave a sarcastic laugh. Yeah, that's a tough sell right now. It's the truth, Mr. Healy. I asked her that very question many years ago. She told me she truly loved you, but she needed Dubois. She ruined my life because she needed your cousin, I shouted, disbelief clear in my voice. Franny nodded. What about the kids, Franny? Mr. Healy, she started, and I motioned for her to continue with a flick of my finger. Are you sure you want to know? It will hurt more than you can imagine. People keep asking me, how much worse can it get, Franny? I've been using that phrase a lot lately, and each time things do seem to get worse. This time was no different. Her tears had ceased, and although she looked at me with pity, I could tell she wouldn't sugarcoat anything. I was about to hear the raw truth. Dakota told me she had Byron impregnate her so that her children would come from an alpha male. She paused, observing my reaction. So I'm a beta? Yes, she confirmed. Dakota wanted her children to have what she called alpha bloodlines, but she preferred a beta, meaning you, to raise them, believing you'd be better suited for nurturing them into kind and compassionate individuals. Byron agreed with her. She also mentioned that for her to feel complete, she needed both an alpha and a beta in her life. I couldn't help but burst into uncontrollable laughter. It was too absurd not to. I let Franny leave after telling her that I would arrange an appointment with EH for her and that I expected full honesty. She nodded and headed for the door, but paused and turned back. What should I tell Dakota, Mr. Healy? Jack is fine, Franny. Honestly, I don't care what you tell her. It doesn't matter anymore. Good night. Actually, not that it matters, but do you think I'm a beta? She began crying again. Yes, I do, but it's not a bad thing. That will be all, Ms. Grable. With a sob, she turned and hurried out, closing the door behind her. I wasn't sure what I was going to do, but I knew I wasn't heading home. I took a gamble that my friend Butch might still be in the office and gave her a call. Luckily, she was there, so I made my way to her office. Let me tell you about Butch. Her real name is Cheyenne Gillette, and she's the director of IT. She's also a retired U.S. Navy commander. There's a rumor that she was the first woman to qualify for the Navy's Bud School when she was younger, but a knee injury ended her chances. She's incredibly tough and doesn't really get close to anyone at work. She identifies as an affirmed lesbian and is quite proud of it, though she prefers to be called queer as long as you say it with a smile. She's made it clear that if you're going to call her a lesbian, you should capitalize the L. I didn't pretend to fully understand her preferences, but I was her friend, pretty much the only one she had at work. This came about because one day I saw her being harassed by some Neanderthal outside the break room. She had had enough and physically pushed him away as she tried to get away from him. I used to have a live and let live attitude about people's choices, but this jerk had definitely crossed the line. When Butch glanced over at me, she went pale. She knew she might be in serious trouble. A company director pushing an hourly employee is generally looked down upon, unless you're related to the owner. I calmly said, "You know, Miss Gillette, he shouldn't have hit you like that. Are you all right?" She flashed a quick smile, leaned in, and whispered something in the jerk's ear. As she passed by me, she said, "Call me Butch. All my friends do." The jerk didn't show up for 3 days and was subsequently terminated, never to be heard from again. And that was it. We became friends. I thought I had messed up when I accidentally called her Butch during an executive meeting. The room went so quiet you could hear a pin drop, and I feared for my career. But she didn't flinch and quickly responded with, "Okay, Sundance." Everything was fine. If you were a friend of Butch's, you were a friend for life. "Damn, Sundance, you look awful." Sundance had become her usual greeting for me since then. "What's up? There's talk around the office about a lot of drama on your end." "That's an understatement, Butch." Exhausted, I collapsed into a chair. "I need a place to stay for a while. Can I crash at your place with you and Becky?" Becky was her partner of 17 years. "Sure thing, Jack. I'll check with her, but it shouldn't be a problem. We have plenty of space. Want to talk about it?" I pretty much laid out the whole situation. I didn't leave much out, but when I mentioned what Franny had done and that I planned to fire her, Butch raised her hand to stop me. "You can't fire her, Jack. That would open us up to a wrongful termination lawsuit at the very least. It could get worse if she claims you were retaliating for her personal issues unrelated to work. I'm not saying she would, but you can't afford the risk. Come on, Butch. So she just gets to screw me over after what she did?" "Calm down, Jack. I have a better idea. Just arrange a transfer for her with Bill. I need a new admin." Butch gave me a devilish grin. "Give her a raise, too. That way she can't claim harassment. You said she needs the money, right?" I couldn't help but smile and laugh. It was the first bit of good news I'd had, and maybe it would help me start recovering from this long ordeal. You see, Butch had been here for about 5 years and had been through 12, or actually 13, administrative assistants now. And that's not even counting those who resigned when they learned they'd be working for her. The first attempts included various complaints and lawsuits, but none of them led to any progress, because Butch adhered to the same high standards that she set for herself. She kept careful records and was businesslike. She earned the nickname Angel of Death among the administrative staff, because working for her, I felt like a walking dead. That night at their house, I had to tell the whole story again for Becky. In response, she constantly shook her head sympathetically, while Butch grew angrier and angrier. I was glad to get her support. Calming down after my story, I shared my conversation with Franny after Dakota left. "Oh, that bit H is definitely going to love working for me, Jack." I decided it would be a short story. As someone who seems to be asking for trouble, I asked them about Franny's beta comment. "This is a man's business, right?" Butch rolled her eyes. "Of course you're a beta, Jack. Seriously, guys, you need to stop watching so many adult movies. Do you really want to know what a beta male is? He is a great lover because he cares about his partner's desires. He is a loyal man, a wonderful father, and maintains conversations with his wife that go beyond their bed life. The beta male protects his family, does the laundry, and cleans up after himself from time to time. He is reliable and not prone to self-control. He is not threatened by his wife's friends or her independence. There are many more qualities, Jack. Franny didn't insult you. She actually complimented you. But what about Dakota's comment about the alpha gene? Becky chimed in at this point. You're going to have to ask Dakota about that eventually. It's something you'll need to address for your own peace of mind. I don't pretend to fully grasp her reasons for what she's done, but I can understand her way of thinking. What? Are you... Relax, Jack. Let me explain by asking you a question. Would you consider Butch to be an alpha or a beta? Definitely an alpha. You're mistaken. She may be an alpha at work, but at home she's definitely a beta. Do you know why I've been with her all these years? At home, she embodies all those traits she described about betas. This truly took me by surprise. I glanced at Butch. She had a knowing smile and was nodding. That's right, Jack. I'm the alpha in our relationship. Butch allows me to take the lead both in and out of the bedroom. She has to be the alpha at work, which lets her be a beta at home. She needs both roles to feel complete. And Jack, the truth is that depending on the situation, we all shift between alpha and beta traits, unless, of course, you're a sociopath. Butch's eyes were misty as she looked at Becky with admiration. I could tell they were soulmates. I remembered seeing similar looks from Dakota. Could it really be true? Men can probably do this too, but generally women are better at compartmentalizing. My guess is that Dakota was being honest with Franny when she said she needed both of you to feel whole. At that moment, Butch stood up, sat on Becky's lap, and they began kissing passionately. I started to excuse myself and stood up to leave. Don't go, Jack. They both said at the same time, We'll behave. They laughed, feeling a bit awkward. It's true, Jack, Becky is my soulmate, but she's the one in charge here. How do you feel about all this? It took me a while to gather and express my thoughts. This realization was new and quite painful, but I began to understand the contradiction in my life. You know, after observing you two interact, I do believe she genuinely loves me and needs me. But the issue is, instead of being honest about what she wanted from the start, she made my life a lie for her own selfish reasons. She knew I wouldn't have agreed, so to get what she wanted, she lied to me. I'll never forgive her for that. So what's next for you, Jack? What about your kids? I have to believe they love you too, and you've said you love them. You can't just turn that off because of what their mother did. I don't know, Butch. I really don't know. What I do know is that Dakota and I are getting a divorce, and nothing will change my mind. I know it's petty, and it might jeopardize my relationship with Helena and Sheridan, but I'm going to make Dakota and her lover suffer, and suffer badly. Out of curiosity, what do you both think about Franny's role in this situation? Becky remained silent, but Butch spoke up. I'm not sure if this makes sense, Sundance, but in a way, her betrayal feels worse to me. I mean, your wife is who she is. Despite Dakota's flaws, her actions seemed driven by her own sense of love, need, and compassion. But Franny's disloyalty was calculated, deceitful, and unforgivable. Leave her to me. I nodded, signaling that I was understood. I'm heading to bed, guys. Thanks for letting me stay here. My phone had been buzzing nonstop throughout the night with texts and calls from Dakota. But I hadn't read, listened to, or responded to any of the more than 20 messages. The next day at the office, I arranged for Franny's transfer. She was set to start as Butch's AA on Monday. I hoped she had a lot of strength because she'd need it. In the meantime, she was sent home with pay for the rest of the week. I was still staying at Butch and Becky's place, for which I was very thankful. They didn't seem to mind my presence, and I had completely ignored Dakota's attempts to reach out. I saw no point in responding and had instructed the security desk to keep Dakota away from the office and parking lot. A few days later, I had an unexpected visitor at the office. Montana, Dakota's older sister. I had neglected to inform security about her, which was my oversight. Montana and I had never really gotten along. Whenever she was around me, she wore a perpetual smirk, as if she knew something I didn't. Since I no longer had an AA, Montana showed up unannounced, standing in my doorway with that familiar smirk. Maybe today would be the day I'd finally wipe it off her face. "What do you want, Montana?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Can I at least come in and sit down, Jack?" "Sure, but don't get too comfortable. You won't be here long." I gestured toward a chair. "Look, Jack, I know we haven't exactly been friends over the years, but just hear me out for a couple of minutes, and then I'll leave you alone." Her tone carried an air of condescension, as if she were speaking to a troublesome child. "You know she loves you, Jack, and she's willing to do anything to make up for her mistake. Do you believe she really loves you?" I did my best to hold back a laugh, but it escaped anyway. "You know, Montana, I genuinely believe she loves me, but it doesn't matter. I hold nothing but contempt and disdain for her. Anything else? I'm really busy." "You're a jerk, Jack. You always have been. I don't understand what she sees in you." "Well, at least that's one thing we agree on, Montana." "I don't know what she sees in me, either." I spat it out with as much disdain as I could muster. "I didn't come here to argue, Jack. Since you won't speak with her, she wrote this letter for you." She leaned over my desk and handed me a somewhat thick, white envelope. I took the letter from her. On the front, in Dakota's handwriting, it read, "For my dearest Jack." I sighed, stood up, and with a dramatic flourish, walked over to the shredder. I fed the unopened letter into it, all the while glaring at Montana. Now I had the smirk on my face. "You foolish, childish little boy, Jack. You're bringing a lot of pain upon yourself and your family." She fumed as she stormed towards the door. "Hey, Montana, before you leave, could you tell me about Brockton Bozeman?" She stopped abruptly and turned back to me slowly. "I don't know what you're talking about." Her arrogance had vanished, replaced by desperation. Her angry facade was crumbling fast. "I'm sure your husband Troy would be interested in—" "No, Jack, please." Her resolve was crumbling. "This has nothing to do with Troy. I was just trying to help Dakota. She truly loves you." Tears streamed down her face. She seemed to know her situation was dire. "Is there anything I can do?" "You have 1 week, Montana. If you don't come clean to Troy, or if you try to conceal any part of your other life, he will get everything. Every piece of evidence I have, and I have plenty. He's going to get it anyway, but since I'm feeling generous, I'm giving you a week to convince Troy of your lifestyle. If he doesn't come to me in person by the end of the week and tell me he doesn't care about it, he'll get it all. Jack, please, I know you don't believe me, but I truly love Troy. He means everything to me." "Uh-huh. I've heard that line before." She had gone from being a haughty woman to a remorseful child in just a few minutes. I actually felt a bit guilty for what I had done. As odd as it may seem, Montana, I do believe you. I genuinely do. That's why I'm giving you a week. If I didn't believe you cared for him, he would have received a sizable package at work by tomorrow. Jack, no, I'm begging you. Are your two boys really his children, Montana? Please, Jack, you don't understand. It's not what you think. Let me explain. I guess I had my answer. You have 1 week. Goodbye, Montana. Please close the door behind you. I began shuffling through some papers on my desk. I couldn't look at her anymore. I didn't know Troy very well, but he deserved to know. You see, EH's team had discovered that Montana, who was a few years older than Dakota, was living a similar lifestyle. Maybe Dakota took after her, or maybe they both inherited it from their mother or Cosmo. Who knows? It didn't matter. I heard the door close and picked up the phone. Yeah, EH, burn it down. Music to my ears, buddy. But Jackson, you have some tough decisions ahead. None of this has been easy so far, EH. What's next? He was very precise in his response. The annulment's a sure thing. With the evidence we've gathered and Franny's affidavit, it's not an issue. We just need to file your petition with your sworn declarations for the annulment and have her served. It's straightforward. I'm going to make this very public. I'll make sure that every media outlet gets wind of it. But if we proceed, you'll be giving up all visitation and custody rights to your kids. You won't have to pay alimony or child support. It'll be as if the girls were never in your life. He paused. Unless, of course, Dubois and she grant you visitation rights, which seems unlikely after we take them down. I can't have you half-hearted about this, Jackson. You're either fully committed to seeing this through to the end, or we just file for divorce, and you end up much poorer. What's your decision, partner? Damn, this situation just keeps getting worse. Look, EH, I need some time to think this over. I'll get back to you in a couple of days. All right, Jackson, but I'm ready to move forward right now. Just let me know. I loved my daughters. At first, I was angry when I heard they were calling Dubois Daddy. But then I realized that, from their perspective, they might just think they have two daddies who love them. It wasn't their fault. Who knows what Dakota might have told them? I honestly didn't know which way to go. I discussed it with Butch and Becky when I got home that night, but they didn't offer any advice either way. I couldn't blame them. I hadn't decided what to do. However, for the sake of my girls, I was leaning towards divorce. Then Dakota made the decision easy for me. She had talked to Montana. What a shock. I had stopped for a quick drink after work at the Horsehead Bar and Grill. I never understood the name. There was nothing inside related to horses. It was usually quiet, and I needed that solitude to sort through my thoughts. But today that solitude was interrupted. Hello, Jack? Dakota? We need to talk, Jack. But first, I want to show you something. Please come outside with me. Without waiting for a reply, she walked towards the door. I left a 20 on the bar, gave a brief wave to the bartender, and followed her. Once outside, under the bright late afternoon sun, and after our eyes had adjusted, she pointed to a Chevy SUV. Do you see them, Jack? I squinted across the parking lot and saw Dubois with Sheridan and Helena inside. Dubois had a grim expression, not looking directly at me, but staring ahead. My daughters, on the other hand, were desperately crying and staring at me. Dubois started the engine and drove off. What had Dakota done? Her voice dripped with venom as she made it clear. Unless you and I come to an understanding right here and now, Jack, that will be the last time you see your daughters. If you divorce me, I'll get custody. Sure, you'll have visitation rights, but I'll do everything I can to prevent that. I'll blame you for breaking up our family. By the time I'm done, they'll never want to see you again." Despite everything that had happened, I was shocked by her arrogance, not just for what she did, but for involving Sheridan and Helena in it. "What do you want, Dakota?" "I want us to be together again, Jack. I want my family back. You just need to accept that Byron is part of my life." "I know they're not my daughters, Dakota." "Of course they are your daughters, Jack. I loved 2 men, and while I could never be sure who their biological father was, I always knew you were the best man to raise them." "You're still lying to me, Dakota. I can always tell when you lie." "I'm not, Jack. Why do you think you can tell?" "Because your lips always move when you lie." It took her a moment to understand. "Jack." "Get the hell away from me, you stupid, vindictive bitch. I'll see you in court." I headed straight for my car and called EH as I drove away. "Go for the annulment, EH. I'm all in. Oh, and burn that piece of shit, Dubois, too." I hung up before he could respond. It was clear to me that no matter what choice I made, she would use the girls as a weapon against me. I didn't really have a choice. It was time to end this. Maybe in a few years, I could somehow make Sheridan and Helena understand. Not knowing what might happen after Dakota was served, I moved out of Butch's place and went to a hotel. I had already handled all the administrative and financial matters. EH was going to serve her with a temporary restraining order, which he called a TRO. He told me it would only be valid for a few weeks, and then we'd have to attend a hearing to make it permanent. Of course, permanent in our state meant 3 years. But EH had high hopes that once she was served with the order, she would immediately breach it by coming to my workplace to confront me. Ideally, he wanted her to hit me, or even better, draw blood or break a bone. He believed that if she did as he hoped, it would make securing the permanent order a certainty. Sometimes I wondered whose side he was really on. At that point, all that remained was to have her served and wait for the hearing. 2 days later, Dakota did exactly what EH had anticipated. She barreled past the security desk, stormed into my office, and began throwing things around while cursing loudly. She slapped me a few times before the guards could intervene and detain her for the police. EH was disappointed that she hadn't caused more harm, but he still thought we could secure the permanent order. The annulment hearing was scheduled for 60 days later. EH lived up to his word, ensuring that every media outlet was aware of the date, time, and details of the hearing. Dakota's lawyer attempted to have the hearing closed to the public, but the judge, who was up for re-election, denied their request. EH was right. The annulment was a guaranteed win. However, he prolonged the hearing and, with surprisingly convincing acting skills, made it as dramatic as possible. I got my annulment, he landed a talk show, and the tabloids enjoyed a boost in ratings. 6 days after my conversation with Montana, I received a visit from her husband, Troy. "Damn it, Jack, I'm just not as strong as you are. I love her and want to give her a chance. Our kids are getting older and will be off to college soon, but I still need them in my life. Besides, I'm too old to start over." He was clearly emotional. "Could you hold on to the evidence for me? I'm afraid that if I see it, I won't be able to move past it." He seemed embarrassed. "I might need it later." "You do know the kids aren't yours, right? She told you that, didn't she?" He just nodded resignedly. "Troy, is she still going to be with her other husband?" He shook his head, but looked down at his feet, clearly embarrassed. "The boys are mine, Jack. I'm their father regardless of who the biological father is. I can't give them up, and she says she'll give up that lifestyle if I stay with her. It's strange, I know, but I think she really does love me. That's different. I understand, Troy, and maybe you're the stronger one of the two of us. I just can't let it go, you know. He nodded solemnly, shook my hand, and left. I never saw him or Montana again. I heard they moved out of state as soon as their 2 kids finished high school. On the same day I met with Troy, Mrs. Byron Dubois received a hefty FedEx package. Things quickly went downhill for Mr. Dubois. It was probably a mistake on my part because several months later, when the court awarded me back child support from Dubois, he was practically destitute. I thought E.H. was going to have a heart attack when he found out he was only getting 40% of $250 a month. He was so furious, he revoked his promise of a 5% discount. He did calm down when I asked him how much he was making for his talk show. About 6 months after the annulment, I reached out to Dakota to see if we could meet and talk. Everyone kept telling me I needed closure, whatever that meant, but I had questions. We decided to meet at the Horsehead of all places. Are you serious? After what you did to Byron and me? It will be a cold day in hell before you see my daughters. If you even hint at contacting them, I'll get a restraining order so fast your head will spin. After what I did to you? You're the delusional one. I had to take a deep breath. Arguing wasn't going to solve anything. What if I dropped the restraining order and agreed to pay for the girls' college tuition? I know you and Byron are struggling, as you said. They're innocent in all this. I know you want them to have the chance to attend a good college. I could see her demeanor softening. I don't know, Jack. Look, Dakota, I'm even willing to babysit if you and Byron want to get away for a weekend or something. I know they're getting older and don't need one as much, but I just want a chance to stay in their lives and show them I still care. And honestly, maybe explain why I did what I did? I promise I won't speak ill of you. I'll just say that you wanted a different lifestyle, and we both agreed it was best to part ways. Let me think about it. Her tone had calmed down to almost normal levels. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions? It might not matter much now, but it's been bothering me and I'd like some answers. Please be honest. It won't change anything that's happened. Fine, Jack. She was starting to sound impatient. Her attitude was getting on my nerves, but it didn't take much where she was concerned. Why did you have to ruin my life? She sighed worriedly. It's all your fault, Jack. She felt that I was about to lose my temper, and quickly raised both hands, continuing. Yes, it was my actions that led to our breakup, but you were the one who went against me. I had no other choice. You broke my heart. What did you expect from me? Of course, I knew it would hurt you when you found out. But I was hoping that we could sit down and discuss this like adults and find a solution. Troy and Montana are still together, you know. People solve their problems, Jack. To be honest, Dakota Montana told him that she would leave her lover to save their marriage, although I had doubts about that, while you told me that I would just have to put up with Byron's presence in your life. I could see that it hurt her. She changed her approach. I never meant to hurt you, Jack. You have to admit that before you saw Byron and me, you felt like you had a wonderful life. I have played a big role in this life. I loved you deeply. My heart was broken when you left. This raises an important question. Why did you need the two of us? I do not know, Jack. She took a deep, thoughtful breath. My sister did it, and so did some of my friends. You may not realize it, but this lifestyle is becoming more and more acceptable. Come on. I chuckled. Why don't you discuss this openly with me before we get married? And by the way, did you really sleep with Dubois on our wedding day? First of all, who told you that? This is an absolute lie. I would never do that. She looked genuinely surprised. Secondly, if I had told you, would you have agreed to the wedding? No, you wouldn't do that. And I loved you so much. Sometimes, however, I just wanted to be with someone else. Don't get me wrong, I liked what we had in bed. I could say that she was honest, if not a little deceitful. It was clear that I would not get a satisfactory answer, so I moved on. What could she have said that would make sense? Why did you have to be in our bed with him? I know you won't believe me, but this was the first and only time we did anything in our house, let alone in our bed. This, of course, took me by surprise, but for some reason I decided to believe her. Then why did it happen that time? She sighed again, but this time with sadness. Byron and his damn alpha tendencies. He just insisted on his own, and in a moment of weakness, I gave up. It was so stupid. She was on the verge of tears. By the way, about the confrontation between Alpha and Beta. Oh my God, Jack, can you forget about this? You were a wonderful husband, father, and lover. Then why the children? And don't tell me it was unintentional. I know better. At least she had the decency to look embarrassed before answering. Jack, you are, for the most part, an anonymous middle manager in a medium-sized company. For God's sake, you drive a minivan. In your opinion, the most fun is to sit at home in your terrible man cave and watch sports on TV. Byron thinks it's more fun to hire a plane to attend the game, or fly to Vegas for the weekend. He drives a Corvette and used to own a successful business. Such a life is intoxicating, but in the long run it is short-lived. Yes, but you're with him, not me. I'm afraid it won't be for long. Really? Yes, living with this arrogant jerk full-time is a completely different matter than just dating him part-time. Besides, he's a terrible father, as I expected. I don't really feel sorry for you, Dakota. You're in a terrible situation, but you made your own bed. You made your own choice. Listen, Jack, I know I ruined everything with my prank with the girls at the bar. It was a stupid thing to do, and I regret it. I was desperate and thought I had nothing to lose. I wish I could fix at least that part. She was silent for a moment, and as for me, I didn't feel any better about this conversation, so forget about ending it. I started to get up and leave. Jack, wait. She grabbed my arm. I still love you and always will. I want you to know that if you come back to me, we will succeed. I promise that I will never see Byron again, and will spend the rest of my life doing everything I can to make it up to you. I took my hand away from her, stood up, and looked down at her. I'm sorry, Dakota, but it's too late for that. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me. Think about what I said about the girls. Goodbye, Dakota. Jack, please don't leave. I need you in my life. I didn't even look back. I have not received a response from Dakota about my proposal regarding the girls. I had no idea if she was still with Dubois or if she lived on the street. I didn't care. But not knowing about Helena and Sheridan continued to torment me, sometimes driving me crazy. They were innocent victims in this mess. Did I make the right choice? 2 years later, I found myself sitting in my favorite local dive bar, Emilio's. I was working on my second Jack and Water when Emilio placed another one in front of me with a frustrated shake of his head. Almost 2 years had passed since the annulment, yet I was still wallowing in self-pity. If I hadn't been such a good tipper, I'm sure he would have kicked me out long ago. Every night I showed up, which was nearly every night, he'd greet me the same way. Great, here comes Mr. Sunshine. Try not to suck the life out of the place tonight, will you, Jack? Clearly, I wasn't the party's life. That drink's from the lady at the end of the bar, he motioned to his left. You gonna cry on her shoulder and embarrass yourself again? Drive her out like all the others and cost me money, jerk, he muttered as he stomped off. I thought Emilio had taken the place of my old best friend. I glanced over and, to my surprise, saw Franny walking toward me. I was stunned, unable to move as I stared at her. I'd only seen Franny at the office a few times, and I made it a point to avoid acknowledging her. Once, she cornered me outside the break room. I'm not quitting, Jack. Your ex can fire me if she wants, but I'm not giving her the satisfaction, and I won't give it to you either. Then she stormed off. I immediately went to Butch's office, furious. Why is that woman still here? Calm down, Sundance. I'm treating her like any other assistant. She's the best I've ever had. She takes everything I throw at her. If she fails, she fails. But Franny stays as long as she keeps producing. And now, here she was in front of me, still Butch's assistant, a record in itself. Over time, her resilience had dulled my hatred for her. She had become just another relic of my past. Hey, Jack, how's it going? When I didn't answer, she pressed on. Do you think we could talk? After a long pause, I finally said, Yeah, Franny, I guess we can.